So that I wanted to clarify, because I feel like I kind of was a liar on my birth vlog, and it made me really upset to be praised for something that I didn't actually achieve. I wasn't able to achieve. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie. Today I'm going to be talking about my birth story, all about baby number 2 and how he was brought into this world. He's actually sleeping back there on his Bobby lounger at the moment. And of course, as you can see, this is life with a newborn. There's diapers and wipes sitting around, there's blankets over couches, there's this couch you're actually on is even worse looking because I've been sleeping here, swings over here. That's just that's life with a newborn. So I'm going to try to keep this as short and sweet and informational as possible and accurate as possible. As you know, if you have had children and you've been through a labor and delivery, it's kind of hard to really pay attention to time. Time just literally becomes a blur. That's how that works. So I'm going to try to be as accurate as possible. So we'll start with January 24th at about 6:15 in the morning. My water broke. The night prior, I was having some mild contractions, nothing crazy. And that day, actually, the 23rd, I had my 39-week appointment with the midwife, just to a normal prenatal appointment. And I actually thought I was going to have a baby that night. She checked me that day and told me that I was at a 5. And she alerted the hospital that I may be coming in that night to have a baby. That did not happen. Actually, the entire night of the 23rd, nothing happened at all. I had very mild contractions very late at night that were super spaced out. After the night before that, the 22nd, having what I thought was honestly false labor contractions. They were super mild, but as far as timing and calculations, they were exactly where they needed to be. Obviously, those things did lead up to him progressing enough to get me to a point where we knew that baby was coming soon. Like I said, January 24th, I wake up and I just sat up in bed and my water broke. I was sleeping, obviously, and my dog woke up to go out, as well as I had to pee. 39 weeks pregnant, you gotta pee all the time. So I just sat up and I felt this small gush, and it's nothing like I thought it was going to be when they tell you like a gush of water when your water breaks. I thought it was going to be like everywhere, all over the place. It was a small gush. It definitely was not like the trickle like you hear sometimes people hear or feel, but it was a gush nonetheless, a small gush. So my husband is sleeping and I immediately went to the bathroom, and I was just like, I sat on the toilet because I'm like, okay, I think I have to pee. No pee was happening, and I handled my business, wiped myself, and I'm like, okay. You know, the middle, like the crotch of my pants are wet, but nothing else is happening. And as soon as I stood up, that's when more started to, I guess, trickle. When I was told trickle, I literally thought of like you put a faucet on like the lowest setting where it like drip, drip, drip kind of thing. This was a very steady trickle. It was not like the floodgates opening, but it was a very steady trickle. Sounds strange, but I just wanted to make sure that I knew what it was and that I was accurate as to what it was and that everything was okay. So I did actually look at it and make sure it was clear. You don't want to see any blood or like any other funky colors in there. You don't want it to smell, so I did give it a smell and everything seemed like it was a-okay. So I called the hospital, let them know that my water had broken, and of course at first like they joked with me that they thought I was coming in the night before, and said to head in. So I don't know that it's the same for everywhere, and I really don't think it is. I don't think anything when it comes to birthing and prenatal care in general is so different all over the country. For us, where we live in the Poconos, when your water breaks, they advise you to come into the hospital right away. I've heard people talk about their water breaking and they've labored at home for a few hours. However, in my area, they recommend that you come straight to the hospital to ward off any infection, to get checked right away, make sure everything is golden, ready to go, everything's good. We got there, I want to say around 7:45. It took us a little bit of time because I do have a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old son, and we got him up, we got him to like kind of start his day. I made the phone calls that I needed to make. My mom and my mother-in-law wanted to be in the delivery room, which I was all for, and they wanted to be, you know, very much involved, and I wanted them there as well, so we made sure to contact them. I contacted my sister, who had agreed to be responsible for my 2-year-old, and did all I had to do, got him up, got him his hot chocolate just to get his day started kind of normal, brought him over to his grandfather, who he hung out with for a little while before my sister getting him, and then we went off to the hospital. So at this point, going to the hospital, I maybe felt 3 contractions. They were very, very mild. I was soaking wet, had pee pads in my car, my passenger seat. My husband was driving. And as we get to the hospital and continue to go in, I am just the floodgates are opening. There is just liquid. There's just so much water coming out. And my mom and my husband actually, like, I wore gray leggings and I kept saying like, do you see it? Do you see it? It's broad daylight, people can see me. And they were like, no, no, no. And it was like, as soon as we got to the hospital doors, you could definitely see it. But obviously if anybody knows that that's what it was there for. I got a big old belly and my pants are soaking wet. So what do you think is happening? So anyhow, we get to the room. The first thing that they do is obviously get me dressed, take my soiled clothes off, get me into a bed with pads and things like that. And they start with the IV just for fluids. Obviously told me that I couldn't eat or drink, which I didn't beforehand because I was a little bit anxious. I didn't get to experience like a natural labor with my firstborn son. I was induced. Like, I didn't just go into labor on my own. So normally when you hear like people say, oh, your water breaks, and then it's like things start to really pick up. So when my water had broken, I felt like, wow, like we might have a baby by the end of the night, you know? So anyhow, I didn't eat because I was anxious. And with my anxiety comes a little bit of nausea, and I figured coffee and a Dunkin' Donut sandwich of all things is not going to help that. So like I said, the first thing I do is get the IV going. I have to sign my life away on consent forms, and they start monitoring the baby for a little bit just to make sure everything is good. They checked me. And they checked me and told me that I was at a 4. Said that the midwife who told me I was at a 5 was being generous. So that kind of put a damper on it for me because I figured, oh great, like we might be here for a while. The baby is back there dreaming and he keeps breathing really heavy and freaking me out. So the first thing they recommended is to walk around for an hour and see if that were to get labor started, because like I said, by then at this point when everything was filled out and checked up on and blah blah blah, it was probably like another hour that had gone by. And by then I had still felt very mild contractions. It was nothing that felt like it was doing anything. So this is the one thing too I want to note. When I was feeling the false labor or pre-labor contractions, whatever you want to call them, I was only feeling them when I was laying down. They constantly, you know, you're constantly told walk around, do this, do that, squats, blah blah blah, and get contractions going, bouncing your ball, blah blah blah. I only ever felt contractions when I was laying down up until this point. So we walked around the hospital for an hour to come back and see if anything had picked up from there. It didn't. I was still just having very mild, minimal, infrequent contractions. So after another little while, honestly nothing happened. I was still just on my IV of fluids. We were just kind of hanging out. They turned me on my left side a little bit, and within the next couple hours they told me to go take another walk. So at this point, my mother-in-law and my mom had gone home, and it was just me and my husband. I told them just to come back when things started happening, so they weren't just sitting in the labor room for nothing. We didn't know how long we were going to be there. So my husband and I get up, we take another walk for another hour. We come back, and at this point, still nothing. Another hour or so goes by, and the nurse comes in and says, go take another walk. So we go and take another walk. Walk around for an hour, come back, and the nurse at this point was like, are you feeling any more pressure? And the truth of it is, I was feeling more pressure. I felt like he was descending lower into my pelvis. However, I still was not feeling much as far as contractions go. They were still very sporadic. They were not intense at all. They were not getting any more intense. They were not getting any closer together or more frequent or consistent. But for the sake of seeing if we had progressed, the nurse went ahead and told the midwife that was on call, hey, she's feeling some more pressure, maybe we should check her. I was checked and was told I was at a 4.5, 5-ish, which according to the midwife was progression because I was at a 4 according to her measurements prior. So she called that progression, I called that frustrating. And then at this point we started talking about options. So I went in with the thought that I was going to do this all natural. I was gonna let my body do everything. I was not gonna have any pain management, nothing like that. So with that said, when your water breaks, you have so long, I think it's like 12 or 18 hours before they start to be concerned for infection, because it's just everything is open. Like your water breaks and you know you lose your mucus plug and things, and that's opening the walls for infection. All of that was keeping infection from coming inside to baby and to mom. So they start to get a little concerned at some point. Not really concerned, but they want to hurry the process along. So the midwife offered some Pitocin, which I kindly declined, and we just talked about the fact that, okay, after a certain point, we're gonna have to administer antibiotics just in case to prevent infection, which I'm not a big antibiotic person, but I was all for in that scenario. I declined, and we went on another walk. We go on another walk. We come back, we hung out for a very little bit. Like I said, each walk was like a half hour, 50 minutes to an hour. Come back, and I decided, let's try the birthing ball. So the nurse gives me the birthing ball. She's telling me like to roll around. At this point, we had been at the hospital for 9 hours. We had been at the hospital for 9 hours. So at that point, my water had broken 10, almost 11 hours prior. I'm doing the movements on the yoga ball, trying to get things going. And at this point, I am feeling a lot of pressure, and not enough to like where I have to push or anything, but it was uncomfortable. But I was on the birthing ball for, I want to say, an hour after taking how many walks, doing how many things. And in that hour that I was on the birthing ball, I felt 2 contractions. So at this point, I had really been missing my son. If you guys have kept up with me so far on this whole pregnancy journey, the one thing that I have made very clear is that my son, my firstborn, is literally my tiny best friend. I am a stay-at-home mom. I have been for over a year. We are very, very close. I am without him on multiple occasions, but this being like, I knew the next time I saw him, it wasn't going to be just him anymore, and I had so many fears of having to because of that, and feeling guilty and him feeling neglected and everything. I was just, at this point, I was just like, get this baby out of me, please, because number one, I am starving. Because at that point I hadn't eaten in like, oh my gosh, 20 some odd hours. I was starving, and obviously not feeling much pain. It wasn't like the hunger was out of my mind. I was still very much hungry at this point. But more so than anything, I was really missing my son. I was able to FaceTime him once with my mom, and then later on when my sister had him, she sent me a video of him saying, I love you and I miss you, and I lost my shit. I was really upset and just feeling very emotional, and at that point was like, I really just want this baby here. I want to get this process over with. So, oh goodness, I can't remember the exact time. I have it all. It's in my birth vlog. Everything is time stamped throughout the video, not like in my description or anything, but I want to say maybe around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night is when they started the Pitocin. And how they do it, because Pitocin is a very, very strong medication to get contractions going, is they start you out with 1 drop. A half hour later, they will give you another drop that just goes into your IV. I'm saying this generally. This is what they did for me. 1 drop. Half hour later, 1 drop. Half hour later, 2 drops. An hour later, 2 drops. And by the second half hour, so the second drop, I could no longer breathe through I could no longer speak through my contractions. So you're talking, this is probably around, oh gosh, I don't know. Like I said, time is so like just a blur at this point. It was a couple hours, contractions just started picking up. I could no longer talk through them. I had to breathe and like really focus. I needed everyone in the room to just be quiet and let me contract and get through it each time. Everything that I thought was going to help me through it, my husband was fully prepared, hands ready with the lotion, the lavender lotion. I told him, like, you know, I pictured meditation music playing and smelling the lavender and just being very calm, because like I said, I wanted no pain medication. That was the goal. However, as soon as contractions were picking up to that extent, anytime anybody would touch me, I was like freaking out, like, don't, not while I'm contracting, I don't want any part of this, like, just leave me be. And they were pretty intense, so every time I was gripping the sides of the bed with all of my might as I was very much in pain. Time goes by, and at this point I am now having to hum through my contractions. And I remember very vividly with Maverick, before I opted for the epidural, I was coping through contractions by trying to breathe and like pumping my legs back and forth and gripping the bed. I think this guy's trying to poop back here, making a lot of noise. So at this point, that's exactly what was happening now with Kane. I was gripping the bed, I had to pump my legs, and I was like humming through the contractions. So time goes on, they're just picking up, and now there weren't many women in the hospital for labor and delivery at all at this time. So they figured to get me into the delivery room. My hospital is very weird. There's a very small labor room, and then there's a bigger but still pretty much small delivery room. Next year there will be birthing suites, so we missed that mark. But anyhow, they rolled me across the hall into the delivery room, and at this point, and as they're rolling me in there and everything, this is when like everything was just getting really, really tough. I was in a lot of pain. We're in the delivery room for, oh my gosh, it couldn't have been long, to where I started begging the nurse. I was like, please get me the epidural. Please get me the epidural. I can't do this. And the midwife came in to ask me if that's what I really wanted. And they told me that they just started me on this new bag of fluids and the bag had to be empty before I get the epidural, because they want there to be enough fluids in your body before getting the epidural. And this bag was just starting. So every contraction I'm feeling, I'm staring at this bag like, please, I feel like every bag has been administered so quickly and this one is taking forever to do what it needs to do and get into my body. So at this point, knowing that I'm looking at this bag and it looks like the liquids are just not draining from it at all, I was begging the nurse to please, is there something I can do? Is there some position I can be in to help bear this? Because lying on my back is killing me. So, mind you, I want to say at this point, they had checked me again and I was at a 5. I was at a steady 5. And that's when, I skipped that part, I apologize. When she told me I was still at a 5, that's when I said, get me that epidural, because this is not happening. I'm not doing this for hours. No. So fast forward back to where I was. I'm begging the nurse to tell me what to do. She asked me if I want to try to get up on all fours. I said, whatever, let's do it. Got on all fours. I'm holding, you know, my arms around a pillow. And now I was on all fours for roughly, I don't know, my husband said maybe 12, 15 minutes I was on all fours. And now, after just that bit of time, the contractions were so bad that I literally, my body was pushing. Like my body was pushing for me. It was time to go. I had no control over what was happening. And with every contraction, with every squeeze of this baby and feeling my body just try to push him out on all fours, these awful, awful noises were coming out of my mouth. And I had no control over that. None. So like I said, at this point, I still have no pain management. It's all me. And the midwife came in to check because the nurse was like pretty much watching the baby's head come out, basically. Not fully. I'm being a little bit dramatic when I say that, kind of, and not. At this point, she really could see his head, but not like coming out of me. She could see his head inside of me with every contraction. So she called the midwife in. We need to check her. So the midwife checks me while I'm on all fours and tells me, you're at a 9. So I get on my hands and knees, and within 15 minutes, I go from a 5 to a 9, and it was time to push. At this point, I am in complete hysterics because I was like, hold up, wait a minute, I wanted the epidural. I can't do this. And the midwife is rooting for me. She's like, you can do this, you can do this. He's literally right there, we can get him out. But like I said, at this point, I have no control over the fact that like my body is pushing. So I couldn't just sit back and like think about the decision I was gonna make. I had my legs up, and with every contraction, my body was pushing, and I'm trying to push. And this is where it was becoming very difficult. I believed that when my midwife said to me, we can get this baby out, we can get him out now, it really felt like my body was ready to just like, and he would just fly out at this point. So I took that into consideration, said, guess I'm screwed. We have to do this way. And we tried pushing. However, like I said, at this point, and from what I'm told, this is because I was given Pitocin. If I had let my body do what it was gonna do and I didn't need Pitocin, and I had waited for hours longer until my body did what it was supposed to do on its own, my contractions would not have been this intense. So at this point, I had no control over what was happening at all. And with every push, I'm screaming. There's gotta be like, if there were any women in the laboring room across the hall, I terrified them. I'm no doubt in my mind, I terrified those women. I was that woman that you hear in labor and delivery that you're like, hell no, I'm never having kids, or hell no, I'm never not getting an epidural. Promise you that. There were exorcist noises coming from me that I had no control over. But that's where we started having some trouble. Now at this point, the midwife, like I said, she's so rooting for me to do this the way I wanted to. But as I'm pushing, she's contracting. I'm not really pushing, my body's just pushing for me. As this is happening, she is just like opening and opening and opening, and it was hurting so bad. And yes, when I do this, that's exactly what she was doing. And it was hurting. I'm waiting to hear like an explosion from this guy. It was hurting so bad that I'm literally screaming, ow, stop, freaking out amongst these exorcist noises that are coming out every time I have a contraction. So at this point now, I'm like hysterically crying, and I'm just like, please stop, please. I said, I can't do this, I can't do this. She's telling me you can do this. And then I literally had like it felt like maybe 10 seconds of nothingness where the midwife looked at me and said, you can do this way and you can get him out within a little bit of time here, or you can get your epidural. It's up to you. And with no hesitation, I said, get me the epidural. So that I wanted to clarify, because I feel like I kind of was a liar on my birth vlog, and it made me really upset to be praised for something that I didn't actually achieve. I wasn't able to achieve. And I didn't even realize that in editing. And I even thought to myself, like, I was gonna talk about it in a birth story, but I still felt like a liar. And I felt a little defeated when I'm getting all this praise for something that I wasn't able to accomplish. I did get the epidural. I was 9 centimeters dilated. My baby was ready to come out, and I got the epidural. Now, I wanna elaborate too, as well, at the fact that I'm not really sure how I was able to get the epidural at the point that I was at. From what I understood, you get to a point where they no longer allow you to get the epidural. However, this midwife told me she would administer an epidural when I was crowning, which I'm sure she's being a bit exaggerative, but saying that there's pretty much no cutoff point. I don't know if this is a new practice. Maybe they don't administer quite as much when you're so far along. I'm not sure. But anyhow, I said, get me the epidural. Now this, like I said, time is just gone, non-existent, a blur. At this point, I don't know if they just ordered the epidural there or if they ordered it when my bag was getting low. I don't know. But time is just, like I said, non-existent, and it felt like so quickly. Like I contracted for what felt like a couple minutes more, where it was still that uncontrollable, like my body's pushing in. The only thing I could do was like roar through it. It was awful. And the anesthesiologist came in, everybody came out, and I had the best nurse to be there with me when I was getting the epidural, because now mind you, I'm still having these very same contractions while getting the epidural. If you've never had the epidural, this is what you have to do. You have to sit on the edge of the bed with your knees up against the bed, like the back of your knees up against the bed. So your legs are like flat up against it. You have to hunch over, relax your shoulders. You have this bowling ball in front of you and you are contracting, and you have to sit still. You are getting a needle in your spine. You have to be still and very cautious. This nurse let me squeeze the hell out of her hand. The hell out of her hand, and she hugged me, and she just made sure that it was all good and gravy, and she was the best ever. And she actually gave me a breathing technique that really worked when it was coming to like those pushing contractions. She literally told me, I was breathing right the whole time. I was breathing like you're blowing out a candle, but in this moment she was telling me to breathe quick, like I was blowing out a candle, like through those pushing contractions. And it was working, so working. Also, thank heavens that the anesthesiologist was so super quick in what he did. So super quick. And I will tell you guys as well, now I'm good with needles. So for anybody who's curious about the epidural, if you're good with needles, I promise you'll be fine. I'll never forget when I got it with Maverick, the anesthesiologist said, you're gonna feel a sting and a burn. And that was literally all I felt. I felt a sting and a burn, and then within 10 minutes, my body was shaking uncontrollably and I didn't feel pain anymore. I felt a lot of pressure. I was still having the very same intensity contractions that I was prior to the epidural, but I was now feeling just the pressure and none of the pain. So at this point, like I said, my body was shaking uncontrollably. I'll tell you guys right now, this is 100% normal. By the end of your laboring process, when your body knows like we are nearing the end and the baby is coming out, your hormones are at an all-time high. This is what the nurse is telling me, and what I was told with Maverick as well. Your hormones are at an all-time high going through this process and being towards the end of this process, and your body knowing that you're at the end of it. What happens when that happens is that your body shakes uncontrollably. So not only was my body shaking uncontrollably because now I was able to relax and my hormones are at an all-time high, but I was also freezing because I was literally dripping in sweat. They changed my gown for me and everything. I was dripping in sweat from prior to getting the epidural and contracting and trying to push. Awful. So I got the epidural, and I don't want to make this all about the epidural, but I really do just want to say, like, I just feel bad that like I feel like I lied to everybody because I didn't explain it in my birth vlog. But I tried. I really tried. I asked to, because like I said, like, what is time in this moment? I asked my mom, like, how long did I labor without the epidural, because like I felt like I really tried. And she said it was about 4 hours. Three? I think 3, she said. And even that seems like woohoo, you know, but to me it felt like an eternity. It felt like it was never gonna end. It was just very, very painful. I probably could have done it. I was very close. You know, it comes to an end at some point, baby gets there, and then your body stops doing what it's doing to get a baby out. And I probably could have done it. And I gave in and I gave up, and I am okay with that. I'm not mad at myself. I told myself, and I even said it in my birth vlog, that I was not going to torture myself. If I felt at some point like I cannot do this, even though, whatever, you can say, you know, women are built for this and you really can do it, and that's great. I'm serious. Round of applause, literally. Kudos to anybody who has done it naturally and didn't give in to an epidural. I seriously bow down to you. But I can say, I know for a fact, for me, if I have any more kids, once my contractions are 2 to 3 minutes apart, give me the epidural. That's it. That's it. I'm okay with the epidural. It's amazing. So I got the epidural. And then from there, I was able to take a nap. I napped for 30 minutes. I passed right out because I was literally exhausted, excruciating. And I passed out for like 30 minutes. They came in to check my vitals and everything. Oh, I have to go back for a second. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot as well. Right before I got the epidural, they had to give me an oxygen mask. My blood pressure was going through the roof and the baby's heart rate was dropping. So they're turning me on my side. They're doing this and that. They're giving me the oxygen mask because my body was in a lot, under a lot of stress. Which was then putting the baby in distress and everything like that. So that wasn't like long lived. The baby was fine. His heart rate was dropping. They turned me on my side, and then he was fine. My blood pressure was rising. I don't know if it's oxygen levels or just my blood pressure, my pulse. I don't know what was out of whack that they decided to give me the oxygen mask, but they did. And that was all right before I got the epidural. So right after I got the epidural, I still had the oxygen mask, and that's when I was able to relax and baby was able to relax. And yeah, so like I said, after a half hour, they came in, you know, asked me how I was feeling. I was still feeling the most mild pain on my right side. Barely anything, but I felt a little bit of something, where on my full left side I felt nothing. As far as pain, I could still like move my legs back and forth, leg back and forth. I couldn't lift it, but I could move back and forth. I could wiggle my toes, all that stuff. So everybody came in and said it's time to push. It's time to push, get this baby out. And I pushed, and I do want to say, with Maverick, I labored with an epidural after laboring with nothing for a very short while. My epidural wore off and they did not give me any more, and I did birth him naturally with no pain medication. It was excruciating. It was rough. I felt like this time was rougher. I don't know why when it came to laboring, maybe because I labored longer, I'm not sure. Or they gave me more Pitocin than the last time, I don't know. But I do know that to push him out with nothing was rough. Pushing Kane out with an epidural was glorious. It was simple. I can say, however, like I said, I had a good amount of epidural. It wasn't enough to like totally numb me and like make me feel nothing and make it harder for me to push. However, I know for a fact, because I could feel it, that I was not pushing with everything that I had. Everything that I had wasn't really there with the epidural. I was still able to push. I was able to focus on pushing because it was much more calm. And within, I think it was 20 minutes or so pushing, Kane was here. And he cried and he was given right to me. And it was beautiful. With Maverick, it was a totally different traumatizing experience. The cord was wrapped very tightly around his neck, where he had to be turned against the cord to come out, where he also got caught on my pelvic bone, broke his collarbone from that. He wasn't breathing or making any noises, and he was immediately taken away from me, and it was just not a good experience. This experience was hard, but by the end was glorious because I got everything that I wanted as far as that goes. I was able to get, I honestly wish they would have delayed cord clamping longer. I wanted longer. They did maybe 2 minutes. They said until it stops pumping, which, looking back at the footage that I had, I think it definitely was still pumping a little bit. There was still enough color to me to where we could have waited to cut it. But they did a short delayed cord clamping. I got immediate skin to skin. And as soon as he was kind of cleaned up and I birthed my placenta. He was on me nursing from the second he came out basically, and nursed for over an hour, and it was beautiful, and he latched right on and there were no problems, and it was just so natural, and it was incredible. I did not hemorrhage this time, and that was really nice as well. I hemorrhaged with Maverick, probably just because of how traumatizing that was, but I didn't hemorrhage. I did need some stitches. I did tear. She didn't tell me what degree, but I don't think it was as bad as with Maverick. With Maverick, I had 2nd degree tears. She told me that this wasn't bad and that it was all internal, so I guess maybe that's 1st degree tears. However, I tore really, really low. So my stitches are right where you think they are. That's where they are. And it's still uncomfortable 9 days later. Not nearly as bad as it was in the beginning, obviously, but I did tear. I did get some stitches, but then that was it. That was it. I want to say, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess you could say I went into labor when my water broke, right? So, because that's like a natural part of like the starting process of laboring. So I went into labor at 6:15 in the morning, July, goodness gracious, that's my son, my firstborn, January 24th, 2020. Kane was born on January 25th at 1:14 in the morning. He weighed a whopping 8 pounds, 13 ounces. I thought he was going to be smaller than Maverick. He was a whole pound and an ounce bigger than he was. And he was 21 inches long. So he is definitely already taking after his father and his father's side of the family, which is fine. I labored for, what would that be? 19 hours. I technically labored. Active labor wasn't until we got Pitocin, which is around 8 o'clock at night. So from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning was active labor. So that would be 5 hours. 19 hours in labor, 5 hours of active labor. That sounds about right. So that is it. That is my birth story. That is how Mr. Kane was brought into the world. Again, I really hope no one is upset that I didn't clarify in my birth vlog everything that actually happened. I don't know why I feel so bad about it. I really shouldn't, but I do, because I just feel like I wasn't honest, and I feel bad that people were praising me for that when I don't honestly deserve the praise for it, because I didn't do it. I tried. I really, really tried. But anyway, that is what it is. And Mr. Kane Russell Frederick is with us 9 days today, and he is beautiful. He is perfect. He is everything that I didn't know I needed. He is everything that I didn't know I was capable of. He's made my heart so much bigger, and I can't even believe that this is done. I'm honestly one of those people, and I've said this in a previous video, and it's so true. I have said probably a dozen times in the last 9 days how happy I am to no longer be pregnant. Pregnancy is a beautiful and glorious thing, and I'm so blessed to have been pregnant and to have had a healthy pregnancy, 2 healthy pregnancies, 2 healthy babies, but I don't miss it. I am very, very content with not being huge and uncomfortable and swollen, and especially the end of pregnancy. I'm happy it's over, and I'm happy that my baby is here and I get to just enjoy him. Thank you all so much, so much from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this journey with me. My pregnancy journey this time around had gotten a lot more following than I expected it to, and it was definitely my most popular as far as like anything that I post. Really, my pregnancy journey had gotten the most interaction, and having you all there throughout all of this, from thinking that I would have diabetes and thinking that I was had preeclampsia, and just being generally anxious and nervous about everything that it comes with, and that, you know, my life is going to be now. I appreciate so much that you've been here. Seriously, you watching right now. I really appreciate it, and I hope that I can be of service to anybody. I'm obviously no expert. I am still a first-time mom. We are all first-time moms to our firstborn as long as they're alive, because with every season of their life we are experiencing it for the first time. So I do not claim to be an expert, but I have had experiences, obviously, and I am more than happy to share them with anybody who's wanting to know anything, needing any insight. I know for me, I've reached out to so many people, and that's the one reason that I started my YouTube to begin with, was just to be interactive with women, especially in moms, and you know, learn from other people's experiences, and I definitely have, and I would love to be that to other moms. So feel free at all ever to send me a DM on my Instagram, which is always linked down below. I get back to everybody. I'm not big enough to be bombarded with messages yet. So I will get back to you. If you want to send me a DM just to chat, if you have any questions, any concerns, anything that I can maybe be of service to with, feel 100% free. Again, thank you all so much. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you are new. I would love to have you, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed hearing all about the birth story of baby Kane. As always, I hope you're all enjoying your day, night, afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are, and I'll see you guys very, very soon in my next one. Bye.